everyone, and welcome to another episode of Franki's Open Mic Podcast. I'm your host, Haley Overset, the Franki's Podcast Network. I have a co-host joining me, Siddhant Khattri of the Vedica Art Studios, and today we are speaking with Susan Fraser-Hughes about her art. Hello, Siddhant. Hello, Susan. Thank you for joining me.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
Hi, Haley. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited to chat with y'all about Susan's art this morning. So I do
Yeah.
want to get started, Susan, with just a little bit of your background, if we could. So I know that you were born in Australia. Like, hi, hello to the Frankie's Podcast Network fam in the land down under. Hi, fam. But like, tell us a little bit about your background and your story and how you got started in art.
Well, it's a long story. It's a long journey. But yes, I was born in Australia. I was born in Queensland, but grew up in Western Australia and lived there until I was about 28. And then came to Canada on a teacher exchange and met my husband. And that is why I live here now. And it's my art journey has been going on all my life, but it really started in Canada. So I started to study and it's been over 30-year journey since then.
I love it. That's so the art. I see that you have one of your art pieces behind you too. I love that. Now, one of the things that you work with, if you could maybe talk to the audience a little bit for those who might not know, that you work with charcoal and frosted mylar, right, as sort of mediums. Can you kind of talk about what frosted mylar is and what it's like to kind of work with those mediums?
Yeah, I started in art school actually with frosted mylar. I'd come across an artist who was using the frosted mylar and he was painting on the back side of it, and then he was drawing on the front side of it. And I really liked the idea of the layering, so I started to play with it, but then just started to work just on the front. And the thing with the frosted mylar is it has a tooth to it. It has a very, very fine tooth. I'm told it's actually crushed glass, like finely crushed glass, that enables the charcoal to stick to the surface, but also it's able to be released from the surface to a point. So it has a little bit of a sheen to it, so it almost gives the sense of a photography in a way, but it also creates this incredible depth of layering. So it's just beautiful. And charcoal, it was never my intention to start working with charcoal as the sole medium. But again, it became about paring things down to a medium that could just really allow me to explore light and darkness.
I always have this question, Susan. Can you hear me, Susan? How do you source for Astrid Myler?
It's difficult. So it used to
Yeah.
be it used to be easier, and you used to be able to get big rolls. So you can go to an art store and they'll sell sheets of it, but it's harder to track down the rolls. I know, for example, that there is a company in the States that does do a larger roll, but finding it particularly anywhere in Canada, there's only one place I know that I can buy rolls, and even then it's not the largest of the rolls you can buy.
That's
Yeah.
interesting that it's I mean that it's something that's difficult to get for especially like larger pieces then. And and this is something I kind of talked to Barbara about with her art because she does the sandpaper. The the texture or the tactile sensory fascinates me. Like me as I do art, I do abstract oil pastel art, and for me, I love using my fingers. I love playing with the oil pastels. I love the sensory feeling I get while I'm doing the art. Do you experience that when you're doing the art? And I mean, what is that experience for you as the artist working with those mediums, being that kind of that really fine, like you're saying, kind of toothed crushed glass kind of texture?
Yeah, it's immediate. So when I work with the charcoal and the mylar, because the medium works so easily over the surface, it just means that I don't have to think about it. So because the charcoal is in my hand and I'm using it directly onto a surface, there's a direct relationship between me, the charcoal, and the surface. So there's not that one. I am not a painter. I admire people that can work with a brush or however they're working, but I'm not one of those people. For me, when I try and work with a brush, it's almost like I'm removed. There's a disconnect for me. So when I have the actual piece of charcoal in my hand, it's immediate, and when I'm working from that immediate place, I can work from an emotive place. I can work from an intuitive place. So it just it's just a technique that enables me to step back and just allow the medium to do the talking, and then allow the flow to come through me. So
I love that. I definitely like that's something that I can get, like I said, you do feel it differently when you interact directly with your hands with the medium you're working with. And it does become a very interesting flow state when you're doing that and you have that extra kind of sensory interaction with your work. Sorry, Siddhant, did you have a question? I saw you having a thought.
Always, yeah, yeah. So yeah, Susan, talk to us about the meaning of black color for you.
well, black for me, I think it started off as darkness. So it started off when I was doing my masters actually, and I started to look at shadow darkness and started to explore what darkness meant to me, and looking at it from all different, from a psychological viewpoint, from a philosophical viewpoint, just from a visual viewpoint, and that emotional. So it became about exploring darkness, like what does it mean to me? But I think over the years, darkness, shadow, enables me to dive deep into myself. So I love the darkness. I love the night. I love spaces that activate a sensory reaction in me, something that heightens sort of my intuitive senses. And every time I go into sort of that darkness, that's where I gain a little bit more of a connection, I think, with the world around me, with myself, a little bit of an understanding. And when I emerge, it's like bringing a little bit of that understanding back up into the light. So there's that balance between light and darkness. So I love the light, but also just am so grateful for the darkness, because it just enables me to sink down and explore.
There's a lot of parallels I think people would find to just their experience of life and valuing the darkness for the things in life that are contrast, right?
Yeah.
Because if you didn't have those things, how would you know what the good things were? To
Yeah.
be able to, have that human experience we have of the juxtaposition of what we consider to be good or light and things that we consider to be bad or dark. Do you ever in your work kind of interact with that sort of a concept as you're sort of intuitively moving through a piece where when you're working, are there parallels that you draw with your own life experience as you're working through things that sometimes lead into the art, for lack of a better way to say it?
Always. I think if you looked at my art over the last 30 years, you would see it's almost a visual documentation, like, of my journey. So, I never, intended to go into that. I didn't expect to be sort of journeying through my art, but it's just something that evolved, and something I then had to step into and start to try and understand why this was happening, which meant that, then I had to start to, look into researching these things that were coming up in my work, and trying to sort of fathom. But it's through doing that I believe that I've been healing, like, one layer at a time. I've been sort of bringing things to the surface, and then just essentially letting them go. So yes, all the time.
I love that. That's such a beautiful thing, I think, and it's a common thread. I mean, and among, you and Barbara and Fina that I've been speaking to, but I think artists in general, that it's a creative outlet for you to explore yourself, right? And it does allow you to explore your own experiences, your own emotions, your own thought processes, and really, really delve into yourself and kind of do that inner journey work when you're working with the art.
And I wasn't always like that. Like, I think, there was a time where I would have said I was emotionally detached. And
Mhm.
I think it was almost like, I think if you imagine wearing an armor, that was me. I had learned to protect myself, to shut down sort of emotionally. Doesn't mean that I wasn't emotional. It just meant that I had learned to sort of shut down. And then I had some things that happened that basically broke me open. And as soon as I was, as soon as I was sort of exposed, then I'm vulnerable. And how do you deal with that sort of vulnerability? And it's through art that I've been able to work through that process. Still working through that process.
It's life's a journey, no matter where you are in it, right?
That's true. It's true.
I love it. Siddhant, go ahead. Sorry,
Yeah.
did you have a question?
Yeah, in the past 5 6 years, like what my reading says, what my observation says, that you have grown a lot in terms of the series that you were making, like the Just a Moment series in 2019, 2018 and 19. And then now you are sort of becoming more and more authentic in your process, and like you are exploring that authenticity in depth, which goes in alignment with the meaning of black color, as you say. And it is also in relation to your seeking. So, like, can you share that journey, that what was the flip in this period of 6 years?
I think I was doing the groundwork. I think particularly when I was doing the PhD work. I think I used to live my life from a things happen and you move on, and life just happens. And then when this event happened, then I shut down. Like I closed. I was broken open, but I didn't trust things anymore. So there was now an element of fear within me. So a fear to sort of explore. And then when I started doing the PhD, I just made a conscious decision that anything that came my way, I was going to go with. So, if I read something in a book and it mentioned another book, I was going to follow that thread. And it's been and I did that. And my PhD took like 9 years to complete. So and in that time I had a child, and it was learning to sort of follow those threads along the way. And, Siddhant, I would go into the studio, and my studio at that time was detached from the house. And because I was doing such dark work, it was like opening the box that I could only open in the studio. And then when I left the studio, I'd close that box and I would go and live the family life and started to explore. But it's through doing the process and through doing the healing that I've learned to trust. So I don't fear anymore. So now I don't fear going into those places. And I think it's when I let go of that fear, that's when I started to progress. The Just a Moment series was pivotal for me. It was done at a time where I was grappling with the fact that I felt every time I went out, I was putting on a persona. I had to put on a facade. This is me in public, and this is me. This is me in my personal life. And it was like I was putting on a mask all the time. And I think that just helped me realize what I was doing, and and understanding that that's not necessary. And so again, just sort of peeling those layers and coming back to myself, trusting myself, being comfortable with who I am. And again, as soon as that happened, then the work that you're talking about really started to come into play.
I think that that's such a relatable thing for so many people, right? Like we've all had those experiences of feeling like you have to compartmentalize yourself quite a lot and put on a mask and be a certain person in a certain kind of environment that requires you to be that, and then adjust yourself in the environments where you feel like you get to be yourself. And it is I think it's a journey a lot of people are on, finding that authentic version of themselves and feeling comfortable to embody it and to express it. And again, I really think that art is such a beautiful way for individuals to follow that thread and follow that personal journey, but then also for you to, when you showcase your art, you create that sort of opportunity and that pathway for other people to say, oh, like this evokes something in me, and maybe there's something here for me to explore that I'm experiencing. Can you maybe talk a little bit about, as an artist, then, how you're able to, or if you've ever maybe had any struggles with putting your art out there into the world, sharing it with people, having it in a gallery and having it on show available for people to, and interpret and experience and have opinions about. Like it's not always easy for creative people to put themselves out there in that way. So can you talk a little bit about that for yourself and your experience of being able to do that, or any struggles you may have had or doubts you may have had as you go through?
All the time. I still have that struggle. I don't think that's probably ever going to go away for me. But I think the difference for me is that I can now put the work up and be okay with the responses that come my way. So, I'll go back to the Just a Moment series, but for example, I had it in my studio and I had an open studio, and the responses were very different. My work tends to bring quite an emotional response from people, or not. And I had people that were coming in and they would look at it and they'd have to turn away. They couldn't face my work. And then I'd have other people that were just fascinated by it and wanted to own one of these pieces. So there's two very different reactions. And I've told Siddhant the story that I had one man come in and I was talking about vulnerability and persona and masks and how I felt, and he looked at me and he was so so cold, and he said, the mask you see and the face you see in front of me is the only face you'd ever see. Like, he completely just shut me down. And I sort of took a step back and I thought, wow. And he literally shut me down for like a couple of weeks. I lost my confidence. I thought, I don't even know how to deal with these sort of responses when someone, but over time I've come to realize that we're all on this journey. We're all at our place on the journey, and where he's at is where he's at, and I need to honor that and I need to respect that. But at the same time, I need to honor who I am and I need to respect who I am and the sort of work I'm doing. So it's taken me a long time to say, okay, well, here's the work. This is what it's about. The response is yours, and I accept that.
I love that. That's a beautiful thing. That acceptance element, again, not just in art or expressing yourself, but just in being yourself, is, that's such a big part of the journey I think so many of us are on. You, we do have such a, because we're humans and we want to connect to one another, right? We do have those responses to people when there's an element of like that kind of being shut down or that being kind of squashed in your, like, putting yourself out there, this is who I am, and somebody else says no, right? And
Yeah.
that it's a challenging thing for a lot of people to go through that and to kind of come out the other side of that and kind of keep getting back up and keep putting yourself out there. So like I appreciate you sharing that and I appreciate you being honest about that, that it's an ongoing process and it's not always that you're 100% confident all the time. Sometimes you kind of have to put yourself out there when you're less than 100% confident, right? And you have to just do it anyway. I think that's a book I think that someone had suggested to me recently. Feel the fear and do it anyway.
Mm.
And that's, again, an exploration of that darkness and that light that you explore in your art. It's such a wonderful parallel. If I can maybe shift gears just kind of slightly back to kind of the medium, because I'm looking at that piece that you have behind you right there, and I love it. It's it's fascinating to me that you have such an ability to create such depth and so much imagery with just light and dark, right? And obviously a lot of other artists, they might incorporate really vibrant colors. You look at stuff like what Barbara works on, it's very bright and very vibrant. For you, when you're like, I'm thinking of like film noir right now when I see that, right? Like old school, like His Girl Friday kind of stuff, and it does have that kind of like film aesthetic, like that old film aesthetic. And maybe some of that is the Mylar, but can you maybe talk about for you when you're working with the mediums and this, where you just have black and white essentially, and then you have to kind of explore all of the spectrums that are in between those things? Do you, when you're working on it, do you experience color even though you're only working with charcoal? Do you like see the color that you see in a subject matter that you're creating and still find that color in the charcoal?
Well, I think it has different gradations in there. So, we could say it's black and white, but there's a beautiful gradation of grays and tones that are happening in there. I don't think of color. What I think about is creating that depth of darkness and creating that inner glow of light that comes through. So it's allowing the light, like I can see the piece behind me, is like allowing the light that's on the shoulder of the dress form to sort of come forward and to speak and to give presence to that form. So it's not a light that I necessarily see on the surface. It's a light that I see coming from within that form and coming to the surface and allowing it sort of to embody the form. And the shadows in the background are about, the light in the background are about just pushing that negative space that's between there. How are they having a conversation? How is the shadow of the dress form having a conversation with the dress form itself? And how does that light help that conversation? How does it link it? How does it push it? How does it separate it? So I don't think of color at all. I only think of a conversation between light and darkness, essentially.
I love that. That's beautiful. A conversation between light and darkness. That's fantastic. Go ahead,
Uh,
Sinan.
yeah, you, Susan, have a very unique process of making the artworks, and you include the nature and the current experiences that are happening. You're like interacting with the nature, be it in conversations with the wood series or the current series that you recently are finishing, the one that is behind you right now. And if you include the IM series, or you talk about the washer series that you have done, it's all about interaction with the objects, with the people also. Like when we talk about the rose series, and the one that you're now beginning with the rose for, yeah, men, I guess that's the I don't like if we have put the title yet, but that's the whole purpose of it. So I want to understand that what is your approach towards, like, how are you interacting with the nature, and how you are you seeing the nature as art, and then you are transforming into your art?
It's a long process. So there'll be something that's triggered in me. And, for me, with this, I'll speak to the series behind because it's visual, but it was about ancestral healing for me. And so I had visited Australia last year, and I was with my parents. And, you know, growing up, I was never shown any images of family. They were just never, my parents are English, so they left their family and came to Australia. And I think it was easier perhaps for them not to have any visuals around. So I had never seen images of my grandparents that, you know, so there was a real disconnect for me from my ancestors. And I have, the last few times I've been in Australia, I've been searching for photographs. I knew they existed, but I couldn't find them. And last year I found them. I found them in the attic. And so for the first time, I have before me images of my grandparents that I've never seen. I'm going to get emotional, but images of my grandparents that I'd never seen before. And I wanted to honor that. And then all of a sudden I get this idea that I need to be doing dress forms. Never before have I thought about doing dress forms, but now I need to do dress forms. But I know it needs to be an antique dress form. I know it needs to be, you know, something with age that can speak to, you know, speak to something, you know, speak to my history. And so I'm searching all sorts of sites and trying to find one. And then I see on Facebook Marketplace that there is this dress form. And I contact the lady and she says, yeah, come to the shop and have a look. So I go, and it's a shop that sells corsets. So this is my journey. This is why I'm telling you this, because this is my process. I go there and it sells only corsets. And I didn't even know that they sold corsets anymore. So I'm there and I go to the back to look at this dress form and it's okay. And then she said, well, we have this one. And it's this beautiful one that dates back to the Edwardian period, which is when my grandmothers would have been in teenagers. And I knew I had to have this dress form. So I bring it home and I'm thinking I'm going to do the dress form, and I know it's speaking to me, but I don't know what it wants me to say. And then I happen to be in the studio later at night and I see the shadows on the wall. And that's it. I have to do a series where the dress form is in conversation with the shadows. So the shadow that you see on the wall, for example, behind me, is not a shadow that I created. It is a shadow. I am honoring the shadow of the dress form as it presented it. So I haven't manipulated the shape of that shadow at all. It is what the dress form presented to me. And I have two other large ones based on that. So it's yes, it starts with my ancestors and my wanting to heal. So but it's also honoring the dress form and what it has to say and its history. And so, yeah. So my thinking on this one is about, you know, my grandmothers would have both gone through both wars, and were there things that they didn't get, were there dreams that they didn't get to acknowledge, things that they maybe had to tuck away because of life circumstances. So honoring them without actually really knowing them, just only knowing them through the photographs I have before me.
That's really beautiful. I think that's an amazing way to connect with, again, it's that human connection we're looking for. You know, you're looking for a connection to these family members you didn't get to know in life, and a connection to sort of where you come from, right? Genetically speaking. I do
Haley,
love
you're
that
not.
you have,
Yeah,
yeah, go sorry, go.
yeah. You're not audible.
There we go. How about now? Love technical difficulties when we're getting into the nitty-gritty of some good stories. Thank you,
Yeah.
technology. That's all right. But I do love this, because there is something of a story that you're looking to tell that the dress form can't necessarily speak, obviously, and your ancestors can't speak to you necessarily now. So the only way you have to interact with the story that can be told is through interacting with the photograph as an object, the dress form as an object. So it's fascinating to me that, seeing the shadow cast by the object sort of gives you an intuitive capacity to tune into the story of the object, right? That like you're able to, it's kind of like speaking to the light, right?
Yeah.
That you're kind of doing in exploring the darkness and the light. And I really love that again, the story and the connection that you're able to sort of dive into. Can you maybe talk a little bit about, so when you're observing objects like this that you're going to be, doing art, whether it's nature or an object that you find, like when you're focusing on the light to try to capture that, does it change the way that you, like later when you move away from the art piece, when you're just like out in the world, does it change the way that you interact with the world to have that kind of that visual sense of seeing light and seeing the stories that happen, those conversations, as you say, between the shadow and the light? How does that play out sort of in your mind and in your own psyche when you're interacting with the world outside of doing your art?
Absolutely. I mean, my art has taught me so much. It's just allowed me to interact with the world, with people, with my environment in a completely different way. And I think I try to come from a place of not so much as thinking, but as experiencing. So, how do I interact on a sensory level? What do I see? What do I hear? What do I feel? Particularly, what do I feel? And just, allowing myself to be more in the moment, more in the now, than more in my past and, more in the future. So allowing me to just I connect, I think, on a more authentic level than I possibly could have done in the past.
I love
Susan,
that. That's beautiful.
yeah. Susan, I want to understand that you have done a lot of research when it comes to science also. Like you apply science and at the same time you are spiritual. So what are your thoughts like how these two paths meet in your art?
I have this need to understand. So I come from a place of intuition and feeling, and always have done. But I also have this need to understand. So I'm like a magpie. I collect information from everywhere. But I read. I research and I read a lot. And I think in the last few years, I've learned to become more responsive to the signs that are coming my way. So the things that are coming to me, but not fully. I trust them, but I don't fully understand them. So, I've started to delve into the science and trying to understand the field and trying to understand the energy and the connection and how is this happening to me? How are these things coming to me? Why are they coming to me? Because the more I understand, the more I can let go. It's not that I need to be an expert on these things. I'm never going to be an expert. There are incredible people who this is their field of research. But my field of research is to understand, so that the more I can understand, the more I can let go, and the more I can let go, the more that spiritual connection can flow through me without me putting on the brakes and saying, whoa, why is this happening? I don't understand this. So just allowing me to be more in the moment with my art. And I think the more in the moment I am, the more creativity can flow through me. Anything that the universe thinks it would like me to say, the more I'm able to do that if I'm not having to break and question.
Again, that's that exploration that the vulnerability that you're willing to show in pulling on those threads, like you talked about, that there's, if I read a book, I'm going to go read the next book that's mentioned in that book so I can follow the thread and I can kind of experience that conversation that's happening. And so I love that. I science nerd myself right here. So happy that you go into the science of it because like I am such a yes, quantum physics and how do photons interact with each other and create this experience that I see, right? And for me, I do have that when I interact with the world. And I think maybe you might have a similar thing. I do look at the differences in light, the way that, the light hits leaves and you can see kind of like leaves might be green, but there's a bright white that can shine sometimes when the sunlight hits it just the right way, right? And, as an artist, as a creative person, when you do this kind of exploration, I do think it does shift your capacity to appreciate nature and the world around you that you interact with. There's a different level of understanding, like you're saying, but an allowance of that intuitive flow and appreciation of the present moment that you're in and the things that you can see and experience and the contrast that you're able to determine with your sensory, right? So maybe can you talk a little bit about that for yourself as you're moving through these different series that you do and as you are playing more with your authentic self, like what kind of appreciation do you also start to find within yourself as you kind of move through that and kind of the conversation that you might be having with your internal self and your external world? How has that journey kind of shaped and shifted the conversation that you're having with your own reality?
Well, I think I came, even though I was quite intuitive, I came from more a linear approach. And, it's just, I think, I think it's just, I've learned to just accept. I'm not sure if I'm going to answer this properly, but I've learned to just accept a little bit more, not try and channel. Um, I think the work that I was doing initially was very dark work. I think it was work that needed to explore parts of myself that were hurt, whether they were my hurts or whether they were ancestral hurts. I'm not fully sure, but they were definitely darkness, and that's why I was saying when I was in the studio, it was like opening Pandora's box and quickly closing it because I didn't know how much I wanted to release until I was ready to release it. But I think now and it's changed. So, I had to come to a place where I came to a place where I came inside myself. So I'm not so responsive on my story and not so responsive on what's happening around me, but coming within me and just learning to love me for who I am, bringing it home to self, bringing my spirit home to me. And because I'm not out here and all over the place, I'm actually in here. I didn't even know this. I don't know how many people don't know, but I didn't know that um, that I'm in here and here, but I am not totally just in this body responding to what's around me. I'm more than that. And as soon as I understood that and brought it home, then I started to interact with the world in a completely different way. And I started to interact with people in a completely different way. It brought me home.
That's beautiful. That's such again, a journey I think so many people are on. How do you find self-love in a way that allows you to express love towards more of your external world and more of the people you interact with?
Yeah.
And, it's kind of having that level of self-compassion and self-knowing and being able to sit with yourself. It does transform your capacity to forgive others when there's something that happens that maybe, someone acts not so nice to you, right? And
Yeah.
you have interactions that are maybe like the guy that you talked about who shut you down and said, nope, this face that I have here is the only face you'll ever see. And, the immediate thing I thought when you said that too is, does he really believe that, or is that a thing that he tells himself? Has he actually been on that journey yet? Because if he can exude that kind of energy that kind of squashes yours, well, maybe he hasn't actually gone through that inner journey the way that you have in the same way. Maybe you did elicit something in him that triggered that kind of a response that was his way of avoiding that kind of journey, that kind of self-reflectiveness, right? So I think that's, again, it's such a testament to the value of art, not just for the artist and for yourself as an exploration, but the value of art to others, the value of art and the conversation that a person can have, not just with an artist, but with a piece. The way that you have a conversation between light and dark with your subject matter, a person viewing that art can have that conversation with that same subject matter and with themselves. And it really does create, again, that avenue, that opportunity for a deeper self-reflectiveness that does shift the way that you reflect on the rest of the world. And maybe you can talk about this just a little bit too. How has your journey and that kind of coming home to yourself helped you to maybe recognize kind of how much more deeply interconnected everything in life is, right? And which is something that I think as a collective, humans are starting to acknowledge more. We're not so compartmentalized and separate. It's not all Pandora's box, Pandora's box, Pandora's box, right? Like they're all interconnected and we all affect each other. And the things that you express, whether it's, something that's performative, whether it's just a thing that you say, whether it's art, they have an effect on everything around you and the people who interact with you. And can you maybe talk about that just a little bit? Is there something to the broader interconnectivity of people, of things, of experiencing this human life that you've been able to delve deeper into through this exploration of your art?
um, yeah, I was telling Siddhant that I've just been listening to Bruce Lipton talking, and he was talking about, he was giving an example of a scientist that was working with an astronaut, and this astronaut, was also a scientist. And in this experiment, he took some of the cells of the astronaut and he took them 350 miles away. So he put them in a test tube, took them 350 miles away, put them next to a meter, something that could read them, and then he had a TV screen. And on one side of the TV screen, he had an image of the astronaut, and on the other side, he had an image of this test tube with the reader alongside it. And he emotionally activated the astronaut. And as he emotionally activated the astronaut, the cells in the test tube, which are 350 miles away, were also activated. And, being that, the cells, they never lose connection with one another. They're still connected. They're within the field of that astronaut, and we're all within fields within a larger field. And I think it's just learning to trust that we're energy. We're not just skin and bones and and brain. We're more than that. And when we begin to understand, and I know Siddhant can talk about this, but the more we begin to understand that we are energy and we are connected not just with each other, but with nature, with everything, where there's that interconnectedness, then I think we start to relate not just as separate entities, but as connected beings that are all one.
Yeah, but then not all the people want to be connected with each other. I think there is some fragile ego of some of the people who are not that aware that we are by default connected, but at the same time they want to resist that connection. And so it comes with like the superpower of, I think, empathy, which you have, like, which probably that helps you to interact with the objects and find meaning, not only with human beings, but you're finding meaning, uh, and that's actually the true meaning around. So it's not for you that you are utilizing something and you're using something or you're misusing something. It's not about consumption for you, because you don't think in those lines, and therefore your art is also sort of making that visible, that you are interacting spatially and you're interacting with time as well. Like you're talking about your ancestors now, you have not seen your ancestors, you have not interacted with your ancestors, but you're still sort of connected with them. And this is like a step ahead of normal average level of empathy, I would say, if there is any levels of empathy.
The Rose series that I'm doing for My Mother Has Dementia, and I started doing the large scale Rose series, asking people that I know who have had or have people with dementia in their life to select a rose for me, and then to, if they're comfortable, give me a photograph of that person, and then write something about the person that tells me about them, tells me a little bit about their character, what they want me to know, and then I create the rose based on what they give to me. So the visual of the rose. But what I've been finding, and I know, I've got a very close friend on here who I did a rose for her mother, and her mother was clearly communicating somehow through that rose to me. So her energy is coming through what the information that I have, and it being embodied then. So I have no control of that. I'm like the conduit for, in these cases, somebody else's story, and allowing that image to speak to them.
And it's the same thing that you did with the previous rose series, which was, I think, every rose is a different story,
It's
right?
that is the same series. So up until now, I have done, I think, 6, but they were all for women with dementia. And it just so happens that the next 4 that I'm going to be doing are for men that have had dementia. And it's about celebrating the person, celebrating the people around that person, and telling the story in a very beautiful way, taking away from the disease. They're not the disease, they are the person, they are the people around that person. So just allowing that side to come through. My father, I don't know where the time is, but my father had given me a bunch of flowers at Christmas, never gave me flowers. And I had documented one of these roses that lasted for 6 weeks. And it just triggered. I knew I wanted to do this for my mum. And, even at the end of 6 weeks, the central part of this flower was still intact, making me think, with dementia, I see with my mum, and, she's losing so many memories and so many abilities to do things. And yet she still remembers when she was 15, and she still remembers her parents, and she still remembers, those things that were important to her. So when I had shown them, I had a couple of people come up to me and say, this has really resonated with me. This is my story. Hence this series with the roses.
I think that's such a beautiful way to sort of preserve a little bit someone's story. And I think Siddhant's got such a really beautiful point there about empathy and the superpower that that is. Your empathy does allow you to some degree, even though any human's experience is entirely their own because they're the only one having it, we are all interconnected, and we come from the same basic, you know, basic stuff. We're all made of the same atoms, right? And so we can all relate to one another and relate to those stories and those experiences that people have. And I think that's really wonderful that you're giving people who are, the idea of dementia and kind of losing those memories and sort of becoming disconnected from your authentic self and the person that you've always been, and sort of losing that a little bit to some degree. I think it's really wonderful that you create something that is holding the essence of that person, right? There's a certain level of, I think, abstract communication, right? Again, you talked about the conversations between light and dark, but it does also give you a unique capacity to have a communication with the energy of a person, not just the things that are on the surface, or having a language discussion about who they are or stories of themselves from their own past, right? That you start to really be able to move away from the language that we use to define ourselves and start to really explore the energy of who we are, or the core energy signature of who a person is. And I think that's really such a gift that you can give to that person who is starting to lose that memory. It's such a, and to their family and to the people who love them, that there's that, you can encapsulate that energy and see beyond what that sort of degenerative disease is, and see beyond what those things are that, that seem to be being lost and seems to be slipping away. You can push past that with that beautiful empathy you have, and being that conduit, and say, no, that energy of that human is still there, right? There's still that person that family loves. And that's such a wonderful gift for you to give people. That's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
I know. Listen, we're already coming up on an hour here, folks. Like, this conversation's been so great. I feel like I could talk to you for another hour, but I do want to be mindful of your time. So, like, we do have your links in the description for folks to be able to find Vedica Art Studios and your website and see more of your art pieces. So Siddhant and Susan, can you talk just a little bit about the things that you have coming up with some of your art shows and your galleries, and where can people kind of get excited to come in and find you and see your work?
Yes, let me answer this question. So there is a global open studio day that will be starting off, like I think from the tentative date is 20th of April, and it will be like a 30-day period. So people can book their Zoom calls and virtually visit also. And if somebody is like visiting, physical visits are also possible during this time for all our artists who are represented by us. And then we have the Paris show that is gonna start from 5th of June, and it will be until 22nd of June. In this is, the name is La Rupture de Desire, which is basically based on the theme of short-term gratification and how it is destroying our relationships. And it's like we are not focusing on the long-term building and long-term compounding of everything that we are doing, whether it be work or whether it be building love relationships. So this concept is gonna be an extended arm of unveiling show that we did in the month of February in Mumbai. And Susan's work will be obviously exhibited in the Paris show as well. And I will be sharing more details about this show. Yeah, so I think that's pretty good enough. We will be sharing some things on our website by next week, and all of that will be uploaded. The banners will be uploaded so that you can visit the shows.
Excellent. I love it.
Yeah.
And Susan, are there any other things that you want to direct people to explore more of your art? We do have your links again in the description for your website, but is there anything in particular that you're really excited about upcoming for yourself?
No, I think Sudan is pretty well covered. The only thing that is happening is I am actually part of sort of an open studio tour for artists in the area, and that's happening at the end of May. for 2 days. So people, my studio is open for 2 days, so people who are in the area can drop in and have a conversation.
And have a conversation with the light and the dark. I love it. I'm so thrilled I got to hang out with you guys this morning. This has been such a wonderful conversation, and I so appreciate both of you for being willing to be vulnerable and have those conversations about empathy and about the energy of who we are and how that can be communicated through art. I really do think it's such a valuable thing, art having that capacity to create that space for people to have those conversations and interactions and self-explorations. I think it's a really beautiful thing. So I really appreciate both of you for being willing to have that kind of a conversation as well as the conversations about the art. This has been so wonderful.
Oh, thank you. It's been a real joy. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, I do want to thank everyone too who joined us live here and joined us in the comments. Do join us tomorrow. We are going to be having a panel with Susan and Siddhant, and we're bringing Sina and Barbara back, some of the other artists that we spoke to this week from Vedica Art Studios. So we're really excited to have a panel conversation with our artists and see where these new conversations can lead us. I'm so excited about it. So thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you again, Siddhant, for co-hosting with me. And thank you so much, Susan, for being willing to come on and share of yourself and your art. I really do appreciate it. So, and thank you everyone again in the audience, and we'll see everybody tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.